Thank you for tuning into Literary Blend, a publishing podcast. I'm your host, Demi Michelle Schwartz. There's no perfect recipe for chasing a dream in the publishing industry, but I hope the conversations on this show give you the ingredients you need to bake yours into reality. So let's flip the page and get into this chapter of Literary Blend. Welcome back to Literary Blend. Today's chapter is called A Trip Down Library Lane. And joining me on the show is a guest I am beyond honored to chat with. Please welcome Sam Helmick. Hi, Sam.
Oh, Demi, it is a delight to be with you today. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm pretty jazzed. We're coming into the new year and a lot of fun, exciting things. And I get to be, I'm assuming, one of the first episodes or chapters of the Literary Blend podcast for 2025. So I'm as giddy as a goat.
Yes, oh my goodness. I cannot believe it's 2025. Crazy, and I'm delighted to have you here. We have lots to chat about. But first, can you share with the listeners a little about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Sam Helmick, and I am the Community and Access Services Coordinator at the Iowa City Public Library. So I get to support staff that do everything from card creation for library accounts to driving a bookmobile to public relations, marketing, and circulation. But I'm also the president elect of the American Library Association.
That is fabulous. So, for anyone who isn't familiar with the American Library Association, can you give a brief overview of that organization and all it does?
Oh, definitely. We're about to be 150 years old. In fact, we are the largest library professional association on the planet. We have about 50,000 members, which represents about 252,000 library professionals and paraprofessionals currently working in the United States, which then obviously serves about 340 million Americans. But we are also the House of the Library Bill of Rights, which was written in 1938 in Iowa. In Des Moines, but then adopted to be the international standard of free people reading freely. So it's sort of humbling to represent so many people who are helping so many people globally every single day.
That is so amazing. And I have familiarized myself with the American Library Association a lot in 2024. And it's been really cool to learn more about what the association is all about and see the incredible changes that you guys are hoping to make moving forward and just your support for libraries and getting books in the hands of readers and all of that. So, speaking on that, why do you feel libraries are so important for the literary world?
Oh, that's like the best question to be given in my position as a library worker and a person who loves the communities I serve. Just like the founders, I believe that this interesting experiment that we call a democratic republic sort of requires free libraries and access to information so we can have an informed society to govern ourselves, to make laws, and to create mores and values that work best for us in a pluralistic and healthy, egalitarian way. And so, what our founders felt were important were obviously education, post, press, and public libraries. And their reasoning is actually very relevant today. I would suggest that in an increasingly digital world where you have to have virtually 9 or 10 different types of literacy to navigate medicine, navigate government, navigate job finding, housing finding, wayfinding, libraries giving you access in an equitable and unfettered way is essential for you to successfully thrive in our society. But additionally, we are increasingly in a isolation epidemic. So when you can have a community anchor institution, which is pretty much the last place in society that doesn't charge you or turn you into an algorithm to simply be and to connect and learn with others, learning being a very vulnerable process, I think that libraries are essential for our social, economic, and informational connection to the world we exist in.
Everything you said is absolutely fabulous, and the world is changing so much socially, economically, technologically. So, as the world continues to change and looking ahead to the next 5, 10 years, how do you feel libraries are going to be consistently addressing those changes and remaining at the heart of literature?
Well, I'm leaning in on you. I'm leaning in on all of us because I think that the best way to navigate the future of libraries is to use them and for the community to have their fingerprints and breath in them. Because again, we are 50,000 members strong, but we are representing, educating, networking, and supporting about 252,000 professionals in the United States alone who serve almost, what, 345 million people. And so using your library, resourcing it robustly will be the essential factors in libraries continuing to serve society in not teaching them what to think, but how to think in our provision of wide, unfettered, diverse access to information, knowledge, and perspective. It's twofold, right? It's continuing to do the fundamentals of what libraries are, but really inviting our communities in to make sure that that continues to happen because it will have to happen mindfully.
Yeah, no, perfect. Absolutely. Using libraries is very important. And I mean, growing up, like, that was part of my childhood. Like, going in with my parents, picking up books. And in school, like, my elementary school was right across the street from our community library. And our teachers frequently took trips, like field trips, like across the street to go to the library. Like, that's been a huge part of my life ever since I was young. And so I really think that we all have a responsibility to keep libraries alive. But along with going into them, participating in their events, and checking out books and all of that, what are other ways that we as a society can support libraries?
Well, can I first just take joy in the fact that you are like so many other award winning artists or authors that I've had the privilege of learning from or hearing about or knowing? You always have a library story. There's always a story where you used the library in childhood or in an adulthood and it had a transformative experience. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to hear a touch of yours because it is a story that I hear at conferences all the time when publishers, authors, and artists speak. And I think that that means that what is happening is the library is influencing your life, but then in this beautiful cyclical sort of way, you create art and information and knowledge and bring it into the world and then put it back into libraries so that the next generation can enjoy it and grow too. Essentially, libraries are sort of scaffolding as we progress as a community. And so I think that using your library not only creates an opportunity for you to mold it and to make sure that you know 100% what's happening in your community library, but resourcing it robustly. Again, we are one of the last spaces in society where your privacy is paramount, and your access to information without you being tracked or turned into a product is not only happening in our profession, but is a core value to our profession. And we all know that to be truly intellectually free, to truly pursue ideas, writing, creation in the way that you want to, a certain element of privacy has to be there. So I think the community kind of venerating the fact that libraries are one of the last beacons of that labor and that purpose, and then resourcing them with supportive legislation and funding are how we're all going to move forward together.
Fabulous. And you bringing up the intellectual freedom and having access to books is a perfect transition into another question I had related to book banning and censorship, which has become a bigger issue recently. And so, how are libraries continuing to combat these issues and continuing to get books in the hands of readers who need them?
This is a great question. So, the American Library Association actually has like a clearinghouse of resources that inform and organize and support the engagement and activization of community members actually having these conversations in their own local spaces. There was an interesting third party study done by the Unite Against Book Bans initiative, which is at uniteagainstbookbans.org, that showed us that over 70% of Americans do not agree with any form of book censorship or banning, which is quite remarkable because hardly 70% of us would agree that water is wet. So this is an American ideal. This is a value that actually transcends political party and any other like identifying factor that might make us look at the world in a different way. So like age, race, religion, ethnicity. And so I think focusing on that work, applying yourself to knowing about those tools, and then having those local conversations are really important, which is why the American Library Association is collaborating with publishers and authors and community members and legislators to remind them that the power of their libraries has always been in their hands. It's always been firmly based in the First Amendment. And our job is not to tell you what to believe and what to think. It's to teach you to have access to the world of information so that you can develop your own philosophies and assemble your values yourself.
So much great information and insight there. I think the most difficult thing as a creator, I'm a songwriter as well, and I'm an author, and so art in general is so important to me. Music, books, paintings, anything. And the fact that art and people's hearts and souls, like when they're creating their art, the fact that that is being targeted and being censored is very, like, heartbreaking because, there's a story for everyone, and if a book is taken off the shelf, that could be the book a specific reader needs to just escape. It could save their life. There's so many things. So when we're taking these books off the shelves and censoring what people can read, it's doing harm. And as a creator, it's something that I've been watching closely because I'm creating books and I don't want my books to be censored either. And so I think this is definitely an issue. And I'm so happy that the American Library Association is really taking this seriously and trying to not only spread awareness on the issue, but fight against it as well.
Can I applaud authors and publishers too? Because if you think about it, this is a cultural dispute. This is a what we're hearing called a culture war, but it's also a class war. And what I mean by that is that if you and I no longer have access to free, publicly funded institutions to gain knowledge and to learn stories and to become creative and to access art, then all of that becomes exclusively privatized. Small independent publishers, authors, artists will no longer have the platforms of community libraries to show their craft because they will all have been privatized, and then there will be fewer spaces that determine what is published and who gets exposure. So I do think that it is important to talk about this and work together because it is a cultural dispute that is also which is important. It is essential, but it is distracting us from the fact that there is also a class war at place here.
Yeah, no, a lot of great insight again. And so now I want to shift into the conference coming up. So, can you just give a brief overview of what is this conference and in general, what do you hope that this conference achieves for attendees?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to talk about because it's 109 years old, and I think that it's been held every single, midwinter, so, like, late January, except maybe 5, 6, 7 exceptions. In 109 years, that's pretty impressive when you think about what the country's gone through in that time. This will be our crowning jewel. This will be the last of the midwinter conferences that the American Library Association has, so this will be a time of not only networking and education and collaboration, but this will also be a great time of reflection and celebration as we transition to having our annual conference only once a year in the summer in the late June. And it's just kind of beautiful because at the same time we're turning 150 years old as an association at the time that the nation's about to be 250, and in a time where we're entering the 25th year of this century. And so I'm really excited to come together to talk with publishers, artists, legislators, fellow library workers, and folks who are dedicated to the notion of free people reading freely and dedicated to the values that libraries uphold.
That is absolutely fabulous. So, digging a little deeper at this conference, what are some of the key themes and topics that will be explored?
So it is important to note that there are, let's see, I would say 6 core values to our profession that the American Library Association has established. So all of our conferences, whether there's divisional ones like the Public Library Association, the Young Library Association, the School Library Association, we have many different divisions to focus on the disciplines, but all of us are going to be focused on those core values, which are access, equity, intellectual freedom and privacy, public good, and sustainability. And you can see where that has an intersection in any community that you were serving and collaborating with. But this year's focus is going to be quite dedicated to three topics: radical access, so that we're supporting folks who need different formats, different approaches to librarianship and access to information, and making sure that our accessibility is not only meeting legal requirements, but we are kind of forefront vanguards. We are thought experts in the idea of providing access. So just really talking about that work and what that can mean in the next quarter century will be a focus, but also intellectual freedom due to the unprecedented level of censorship and chilling effects that we're seeing across our nation for all kinds of expression and art. And lastly, artificial intelligence, because it's important for us to know these tools and teach these tools to help folks navigate the next step in the technological world.
Fabulous. So I know that the conference as well has very collaborative and hands-on experiences and workshops, which is really important for professional development. So can you speak on this?
Yeah, I like the peer-to-peer exchanges that we have at this conference simply because I do learn from elevator conversations, but vendor hall conversations, and also, formal panels and presentations from our publishers, from our vendors, from my fellow library workers, from artists and authors. It's been really exciting to me to learn how to collaborate specifically as the immediate past president of the Iowa Library Association and working against legislation that harms both students and authors teachers and teacher librarians. And some of those conversations literally happened in the peer to peer exchanges at conferences where I recognized that this isn't just the work of a library worker to make sure free people read freely. This is the work of everybody. But I'm also super excited about a couple of our authors that are coming to present. I get really excited and kind of fanboy out like I'm at a Comic Con.
Do you want to share some of your favorite ones you're most looking forward to?
That's kind of hard because, when you're like president elect, you're supposed to be very neutral. But I am so excited about Nick Brooks, who's coming. He raps under the artistic name Ben Kenobi. If you have heard of him, he is wonderful. And he has these middle readers. My favorite is Nothing Interesting Ever Happened to Ethan Fairmount. And I love it because it's this beautiful story of a child of color. He is a self proclaimed genius and inventor, and he finds what I would say is an alien in an abandoned factory in his town, and everything just goes cocoa bananas and fascinating from there. And I'm hoping that when I take my copy of that and ask him to sign it, I can be very chill, but I'm worried that I won't. Yeah, so very delighted about that.
I bet, I bet. So, after the conference though, like looking ahead, what do you hope that this conference provides in terms of a lasting effect? Because I think with any event like this, any kind of publishing conference, it's important to go and be present and do the networking and learn and connect, but there should be a lasting effect. So, with this one specifically, and in terms of looking at library professionals, what do you hope that they take away, or what do you hope that they carry with them as they continue during this journey and down their path?
So it's twofold. I love the fact that our conferences have something called a community of care where you can go and find like a quiet space and like heating pads and tea and coloring sheets and just sort of like take the information in and sort of synthesize it privately and quietly. So we respect all types of learners, right? And in fact, I'll admit I fell asleep in the community of care maybe two conferences ago because I was just really conferencing hard and it was hilarious. But we also have these networking opportunities where folks will meet each other and have life changing um, experiences. In fact, like my presidential advisory committee is full of people who can really, it was humbling. We were talking the other day and it was like, how do you all know Sam? And I'm like, oh, one of them's like, I met Sam at LibLearnX in Baltimore. We were at this hotel and we both connected at this value. Or oh, I met Sam at this panel and we were learning this thing from ALA and then we did another thing for libraries. And I just thought, wow, my life has changed because of the interpersonal connections I've made. So I love that the ALA conference structure has both a place for me to restore and to rest and reflect. But I would ask that my conference attendees really like lean into each other, like write the reason that you connected on the back of your business card and then follow up, subscribe to people's personal channel. And what I mean by that is like be invested in something that they have shared with you and then follow up with it the next day. It will change your life. And then I think this is a call to action. um, I ran on the concept of our stories are worth telling. And so I really kind of hope in this holiday spirit, we will listen to each other's stories and we will repeat the sounding joy because I think it's useful for us to remember how vital and impactful libraries are to the American public. That for every dollar that you invest in a public library, you get a $9 return on investment, and that those are important things to share with everybody.
Absolutely perfect. I love how you emphasize the importance of networking in terms of not just the connection you make in the moment, but taking the time to follow up with them and actually build a relationship. I think sometimes we can make connections with people and they have the potential for something, but then neither person continues that. And it's a lost opportunity. And, being in publishing and also in the music industry, like networking is huge for me all the time. And there are many moments where I met somebody in passing and then I don't know, they could have like played one of my songs or like they liked one of my stories in an anthology or something. And then just simply thanking them or following up with them or meeting them at a conference and then connecting on social media, like those have led to open doors. And you have no clue what your future could hold if you don't make those connections. And so I think the really cool thing is like in publishing, it's a place where something can happen overnight and your connections could lead to open doors and successes. And those connections that you make have the potential to do that. And so treating every connection you make like gold is definitely something to keep in mind.
I agree 1,000%. I used to, when I did presentations in my early career, tell people be the citation you want to see in the world. And what I mean by that is if you need a friend, if you need an encourager, if you need somebody to open the door and get you in those rooms, you got to be that for everybody too. That energy has a way of compounding and coming back to you manifold ways.
Yes, absolutely. So, just to wrap up our chat, what are some final thoughts you have to share on libraries in general?
I just am absolutely delighted by the idea that you and I can walk into a community space and meet folks who come from completely different backgrounds, and we can have a life altering experience. So, we had an insect zoo in the library a couple of months back, and it was just neat to see like a senior citizen and like a little person both holding scary bugs and kind of confronting a mild phobia together and having a transformative experience. And these two people would never have had that experience. They would never have met each other. They would never have had an opportunity to learn that way without libraries. And so I guess I want to end this with gratitude that libraries exist, gratitude that folks are focused on them and contributed to them as artists and authors and taxpayers and library users in the year 2025. And that my call to action is that if you have not used your library, I really hope that before the end of January 2025 concludes, you will avail yourself to it because I think it's life changing.
Perfect note to end on. It was a delight having you on the show. And this brings us to a fun segment called the plot twist. Everyone likes it. I'm going to ask you a random question you could have never seen coming. Are you ready?
I am totally ready.
Okay, perfect. So this is a perfect one for you. So it's related to the Dewey Decimal System. If for all of 2025 you could only read books from one classification section, which one would you choose?
Ooh, 811s because it's poetry and I'm absolutely loving with poetry. And I sort of feel like in some ways it's science and sometimes it's art and often it's religion and occasionally it's math. And so poetry encompasses the long epics and the tiny little haikus. And I would have as much as I could possibly get with that one tiny section.
That was such a quick answer. Go you.
Thank you. I love that question.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And before we go, can you share with everybody where they can learn more about the American Library Association, the conference, and just connect with all that's going on as this year continues?
Oh, yes, I'm gonna invite all of my friends to ala.org. I'm gonna also invite you to unitedforlibraries.org, and from there, you can find information about our many conferences, learning opportunities, and ways to connect so that you too are contributing to Free People Reading Freely.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me for this amazing and insightful conversation.
You too, Demi. Happy New Year.
You too. And listeners, that's a wrap on this chat with Sam. I hope you enjoyed taking a trip down library lane. If you did, please consider leaving the show a review and giving it 5 stars to help others just like you discover it. Also, if you have friends in publishing you think would enjoy the show, please pass it along to them. Thank you again for listening, and until we flip to the next chapter, happy reading and writing.